We have to create a crisis. The common enemy of humanity is man. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, and famine would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. Problem definition. In the 1970s, we were going to freeze to death. In the 1980s, we were going to burn up because of ozone depletion. In the 1990s, global warming, that became the new climate change mantra into the 2000s. In 1987, the cause of the problem, according to the UN, poverty is a major cause and effect of global environmental problems because nations like the U.S. consume too much and have too much wealth, much in the form of private property.
In my inaugural address, I pledged that America would respond to the growing threat of climate change for the sake of our children and future generations.
In order to create a solution for climate change, the United Nations came up with this definition of sustainable development, which is development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Needs are dictated, wants are not allowed. This is Marxist ideology, from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. The green goal really has nothing to do with climate change at all. It is all about system change from capitalism to socialism. This is our definition of sustainable development. Sustainability is artificial scarcity under the guise of conservation. It is a behavior modification scheme through social engineering. At its core, it is worldwide rationing. It is less of everything. Less food, less water, less energy, less mobility, less choice, less freedom. Sustainability is rationing. It is ultimately about control.
It's control. It's really about hierarchy, control. We know better. We want to have a society which works this way. And America, by nature, works this way.
In a great nation like ours, you can't let people do what they want. It has to be coordinated.
Los Angeles seems like this big sprawling mess, almost designed to give planners and ambitious politicians splitting headaches. But should it? LA is spread out, and yes, there are a lot of cars, which is why politicians and planners want LA to be more like New York, with its high-density living, towering skyscrapers, and state-of-the-art subway system. And they want to do it by pushing Californians away from cars and single-family houses.
Building single-family homes in large lots is not going to be very popular. Single-family homes in small lots and multifamily will be more popular and more affordable.
Hassan Ikrada runs the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG. SCAG coordinates planning for all of Southern California. It subsidizes government projects and hands out lucrative contracts to big developers who help implement its vision of a denser Southern California.
We're going to add 4 million people to this region in the next 25 years. The demographic shifts, the rising cost of commuting, the rising cost of gasoline, energy, is going to kind of probably have people think again about their choices where to live.
I think the real reason is it's control. It's really about hierarchy, control. We know better. We want to have a society which works this way. And America, by nature, works this way.
Joel Kotkin, Chapman University professor and author of The Next 100 Million, points out that for more than a decade, more people are moving out of California than are moving in. So why the push for more density? Kotkin points to an ideology called smart growth.
Smart growth, I think, was very much based on this idea that you had to control what was going on with a very centralized plan. Also, this really is a way of favoring well-entrenched developers against either entrepreneurial developers, and in many ways favoring urban developers over those who are in the suburbs. So there's a confluence of a kind of an ideology or religion of smart growth with a powerful economic force of rent-seeking capitalists who support it.
We're a proponent for us planning for the future. we're proponents for us coordinating infrastructure with how we're going to grow. If that's what you call smart growth, so be it.
I think that one of the biggest problems that the planners have is they are just contemptuous of what human beings want, what the vast majority of the population wants. And I don't think that works long term. This isn't Europe. The next generation will look for other places to live what they consider to be American middle-class standard of living. We have a growing population. We just did a survey recently, millennials, their favorite place where they want to live is suburbs. Now, you can impose this kind of planning regime over people's preferences. I think you'll get enormous pushback over time.
Spons, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Wow, it must be a controversial item that you've got 7 leaders back here of 7 or more political groups. I mean, we've got Freedom Tea Party, We the People Rising, Chino Tea Party, Mountain View Republican Group. We're all here. We're all representing because this is controversial. And that gentleman has the word of the day, the statement of the day, how half-assed. If you guys want to take this back, that's not even done, this plan, to your city councils, you know we're here, we're ready to go, and we're ready to be your biggest burden in your city. We've already fought numerous things in numerous cities, where many of you I know on a personal level, and we'll fight this as well. Each one of us will take a city. Here we go again. This unelected board is advocating that cities and counties switch from private investor-owned utilities to government entities. Your claim is to save ratepayers money. This is impossible because government utilities will push subsidized green renewable energy, which costs more to produce. When was the last time government did anything better than the private sector? Your proposed community choice aggregation is a policy that enables local governments to add up electricity demand within their jurisdictions in order to procure alternative renewable energy supplies while maintaining the existing electricity provider for transmission and distribution services. It promotes expensive renewable energy over traditional forms of energy. In short, it adds a middleman to siphon off more of our money. A CCA has been proposed that will impact electricity rates in all cities in San Bernardino and Riverside counties. The plan will spend millions in financed capitalization costs establishing a joint power authority, another unelected board. The costs include staffing. Can you say the word pensions? I know a couple cities out there that are dealing heavily with pension issues. And overhead, a consultant report says the ratepayers can realize less than 5% savings on their current electricity bill. Big deal. CCA will force opt-in to a new government power companies. You are the elected board officials, well appointed, from your cities. You know the pulse of your community. I know Ms. Robertson, I know Ms. Stone, and I know Jesse. They know what's going on in their cities. They know how this is going to go if it goes back to the cities. It's not going to go well. So please, I urge an absolute no vote on this measure, on this plan. It's not, if I go to class in college and I don't have my homework done, I'm going to fail the class. So you guys fail with this proposal. Say no, take it back to the board, take it back to the drawing lines. You need to do something better than this if you represent the citizens of your hometown.
Thank you, Ms. Pons. Appreciate the comment. I'd like to say, as we bring this back to the board, I'd like to appreciate all the public comment today. I appreciate the input and hearing from the public. With that, we're going to bring this back to the board for a vote, and I'll entertain a motion.
Come on, Wapner.
Ms. Robson, Harrison has moved to support staff's recommendation. That's to move forward. Do I have a second? Dies from a lack of a second.
Yeah.
Nice job, guys.
Thank you.
Rancho Cucamonga 10 years ago established Healthy RC program. Healthy mind, healthy body, healthy earth. That's sustainability.
Okay, so we are in Rancho Cucamonga,
Rancho Cucamonga is known for its single-family style homes, family-type living, very nice neighborhood, and this is what they are trying to do to all of our neighborhoods in the name of climate change, Agenda 21, and reducing your carbon footprint. Now imagine living in this neighborhood, and these houses are probably $400,000 or $500,000 because this is Southern California, and then right next to your house is this monstrosity. Look at this, big old giant stack and pack. So you have these houses, and then right next to your house is this mega development where over 1,000 people are going to live. Now think about what this does to the schools in the area. You're going to have all these new people moving in who weren't here before. This is how you get traffic. This is how you get overcrowded schools. So I'm here with Dan Titus. What do you want to say about this, Dan? You know more about this project than I do.
This project is a high-density development here in Rancho Cucamonga on the corner of Foothill and Hermosa. And as Gary mentioned, these developments are designed around sustainability, which is to reduce your carbon footprint. And of course, these developments have little or no parking. And it stresses not only the schools, so these nice houses here are eventually going to have to pay for increased capacity for schools in the way of school bonds, and not only that is that they're going to have to pay for more fire and services like police. So it all goes downhill. And another aspect is that these apartments will be, if they're for sale, be comped, which means comparison when you go to sell it to this house. So that's going to be worth a lot less, but they'll average it out. Now all of a sudden the property value goes down.
So here's the corner house. These guys bought this house thinking, oh, I only have a couple of neighbors, but now suddenly because of city council, they have hundreds and hundreds of neighbors. I mean, this is absurd. I just cannot believe that they're developing things like this in a city like Rancho Cucamonga. Massive, mega stack and pack.
With local control funding, you mentioned the purchasing of technology. Is that the focus for your funding, your request, or are you going to use it for anything else?
No, we're actually tapping into multiple pots that we have to try to look at our technology, our initial plan. Part of that bond will be technology. Of course, this is going to be an initial plan that we will have to look at down the line for refreshing. And to me, that's the open question in the state.
Creating a crisis, creating a solution. The road to socialism basically comes through redistribution of wealth, import poverty, overwhelm the infrastructure, creating real resource scarcities, create faux artificial scarcities and shortages by constraining resource capacity, for example, the water crisis. Goal: destroy the middle class.
In the winter of 2012, from about November to February, we were at what's called 200% above normal rainfall. California's funny the way we measure hydrology. So we say 100% is normal, and if you're at 200% above that, that means you're double normal. And we had this extreme, what we call a above normal scenario for about 62 days, from November to February. And during that time period, the agencies came in under agency discretion and said, we're going to stop all water from moving from north to south during this extreme flow period. And during that 62-day period, the state of California, the people of California, the farms of California, the businesses of California, the moms and dads of 2.5 children of California lost 857,000 acre-feet of water. And what does that translate in real terms? That's the entire annual water supply for the Los Angeles basin. That left our reservoirs throughout the state at low levels because they weren't allowed to recharge during that high rain and snow period, and they were continually being sucked down during 2013 just to meet basic demand throughout the state. So when we went into 2014, we actually went into it in a deficit because our reservoirs were already at record lows going into a period of little to no rainfall, and now no recharge. So this is a drought on top of a drought. Our reservoirs in 2014 are at the lowest levels they've been in many cases since construction. And even when we did receive some rain and snow here in the early parts of 2014, agencies and operations, both at the state and federal level, were allowing water to move through the delta out to sea at a rate of 150,000 cubic feet per second to 250,000 cubic feet per second. 100,000 people's homes' annual water supply.
What I have on screen is the Cal EnviroScreen 3.0. The red areas are Southern California's most disadvantaged communities. The term disadvantage is not leftist rhetoric. It is a term passed in state law that carries a specific definition. The definition itself is very complex, but what I have discovered in my research is that you are only a disadvantaged community if your population is 80% or greater Latino. Cities like Huntington Park, for example, which are 97% Latino, fall into this category. Disadvantaged communities, by definition, are environmental justice communities. According to the left, communities of color are far more likely to suffer from pollution than non-communities of color. Now, if you sit down and watch this video in its entirety, and I will have it linked in the description as well as the pinned comments of this video, you will learn that cities with majority Asian populations do not qualify as disadvantaged, mainly because they don't have representation in Sacramento. What they are doing with all of this is they are taking gas tax money, cap and trade money, and other taxes, and they are funneling it into these disadvantaged communities in the name of fighting climate change. The absurdity of all of this is that they expect us to believe that pollution in the environment skips over white and Asian areas and only afflicts Latino areas. The Latino takeover of America via demographics is imminent, and laws like the Green New Deal are its legislation. This is a massive transfer of wealth from one group to another based solely on race. And it's because of this why we are seeing these kinds of headlines. These are not poor, starving people. This is a welfare army, and they think that their time is now. It is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who recently said that America is stolen land. Now it's time for her and her people to reclaim it.
In a time where our planet is under attack,
environmental justice, to make sure the low-income population households and also minorities, their interests are protected. That is very important. That's why we are here. Yes.
Can you define what the minorities are? What minorities are you protecting?
Yes, minorities based on the federal definition, really based on the ethnicity. So any non-white ethnicity, including African American, including Asian, including Hispanic.
So you would be considered a minority?
I would say so.
So
by the federal definition, yes.
Okay, I just want to understand what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely. But as a matter of fact, we do see, that's a very good question, Tracy. We do see a trend that so defined a minority may become majority in terms of the population.
So if there's less Caucasian people, then are they the minorities too, or not?
Caucasians are still considered as non-minority by definition.
We live in Fontana, Hispanic people are the majority.
In numbers.
In numbers, but that's not what you would consider a minority. So because there's less Caucasian people, that's not a minority.
Hispanics, even in your community, there are a majority by numbers, they are still defined as minority.
I may be white, I may not be low income, but the fact of the matter is, that doesn't mean that everything has to be distributed equally and evenly, because there is such a thing as structural disinvestment and structural racism, and this is what this plan is trying to do. It's trying to contradict centuries of disinvestment.
I'm realizing that these are actively disinvested communities that are experiencing food apartheid as a result of environmental racism.
First, one of the most important things about conducting environmental justice analysis is understanding what groups we want to determine impacts, what groups we want to analyze and figure out how is our plan affecting these communities. So starting with identifying environmental justice population groups, starting with our minority population. So just to reiterate what these are. We looked at every place, every community in the Skag region and selected out the ones that had the highest third of minority and low-income population. So this really helps us look at the areas that have the highest concentration of our environmental justice populations.
So environmental justice is also a federal requirement, and it's required of every federal agency receiving transportation dollars to analyze and make sure that its plans do not negatively or disproportionately impact low-income and minority communities. This is actually through several statutes, Title VI, Executive Order 12898 from 1998, and several other requirements and guidelines. And so that's where the concept of environmental justice comes from. So SCAG must do an environmental justice analysis as part of its RTP-SCS.
Ashley mentioned in her opening remarks that there's been $6 billion appropriated for these respective programs over the course of the last 4 years. And many of you probably know this, but that money, when it goes to the agencies, they begin the process of grant making or issuing funding for individual projects. About $2 billion in funding has made its way into specific projects that are on the ground right now providing benefits. And half of that money, that $2 billion, is benefiting the state's most impacted and disadvantaged communities.
Where those most impacted by fossil fuel infrastructure should be the first in line to get renewable energy in their communities for the public health and economic and jobs benefits.
These investments will allow us to build a pathway to environmental and public equity, an equity that we so desperately need now.
The key word here is equity.
We are ready for a cleaner environment, and we are ready for our fair share of resources.
The fight forward means we're going to fight for environmental justice, for restorative justice, for housing justice, for worker justice, and for immigrant justice.
The last enemy I want is Mother Nature. And so I intend to work with her and let her know that the Department of Justice in California is with her.
Today is October the 2nd, 2018. I am here with Dan Titus with the American Coalition for Sustainable Communities. Dan, I want you to tell us what the San Bernardino County-wide vision is and why we are here tonight at Hesperia City Council.
The County-wide vision plan is a big idea. It is a voluntary program that was instilled into the county through grants and through SCAG and Sandbag at the time, which is now SB-COG, which is the local council of government. The idea behind the plan is sustainable development. What's sustainable development? Basically rationing. It is inventorying, cataloging, and controlling all assets, putting those into a box. Once they're in a box, you have a finite amount, and therefore you can charge people for the use of it. And a good example of that is tiered water rates, and now even water rationing. So it goes on and on. It's basically, in a roundabout way, bringing socialism into the county.
And then what are we doing here at the City Council?
We're here at the City Council tonight to ask the Hesperia City Council to rescind the countywide vision statement that they signed agreeing to the countywide vision plan. Again, it's voluntary, and at the time they did that, a lot of the cities in San Bernardino County and throughout the nation didn't really understand what visioning processes were. And again, it's installing sustainability or sustainable development, which is rationing.
And so how many years have you spent trying to get a single city to get out of this program?
We started this process about 5 years ago, and we authored a report called Social Equity Through Sustainability, with the goal to rescind the countywide vision.
I have a motion from Councilmember Brasowski. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Russ. Any further discussion? Call for the vote.
We're just supposed to provide direction, correct?
No.
The item passes 5-0.
So to sum up, sustainable development is artificial scarcity under the guise of conservation. It is a behavior modification scheme through social engineering. It is rationing. It is fomented through artificial crisis. Sustainable development is implemented locally through UN Agenda 21 and smart growth. The UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is designed to change the economic structure of the world and redistribute wealth from rich nations to poor nations. The ultimate goal of sustainable development is to redistribute wealth away from the middle class, lowering standards of living. Therefore, sustainable development is unsustainable because at some point, the parasite kills the host.
Whether you like it or not.
Make it happen.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
It's gonna happen.